Citizens across South Africa will be gathering in rallies and singing anti-apartheid songs to commemorate the National Youth Day. Now, this commemorates 47 years since the Soweto Uprising of 1976, where South African youth revolted against the unjust policies of the apartheid government.
The June 1976 uprising was aimed at fighting unjust education practices, segregation in schooling, and general poor living conditions in townships. We also have here that decades later, youths in South Africa still continue to face challenges such as high levels of unemployment, limited access to quality education, economic inequality, and social issues. Joining us now to further discuss this is the Socialist Youth Movement organizer and campaigner Zaki Mamdu. Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning, and to you and to your viewers, thank you for having me on the show.
All right, very important day here. We hear that it's going to be a long week of a long weekend in South Africa. But beyond that, it's important that we look at what exactly the impact of today is. And as we forge ahead for the future, we must look back at the past and the sacrifices that young people made. So I want you to give us a picture of exactly the importance of this day to the young South Africa, in fact, to the whole of South Africa.
Absolutely. I mean, look, the youth of 1976 really played a fundamental role in the struggle against apartheid, and that Soweto Uprising that occurred in 1976 and the subsequent massacre of those young people marked a real turning point in the struggle against apartheid and the escalation of that struggle, and was a driving force which ultimately pushed that struggle towards victory. Now today, of course, it's really important for us to remember the sacrifices that were made by those young people, as well as to recognize and commemorate their mark on history. But it's also important, for young people in South Africa today to equally recognize that we are not passive witnesses of history. And while we look back on our own history and reflect on it and appreciate it, we must also remember that we are active agents of history itself, and in that have the ability to make our own mark. And like you mentioned in the segment leading into this, young South Africans are faced with numerous challenges and confronted by all manner of social ills and hardships. And so it's that struggle for true and real freedom and prosperity and equality and stability still continues. And so Youth Day in South Africa today is very much an opportunity for us as young people in South Africa to say, we are here, we have ideas, we have plans for the way in which we'd like to shape and envision and see our futures. But also that we are active agents of change, and we should present ourselves as such in trying to make that change in our society that is incredibly necessary to confront the issues that we are confronted by.
Well, to be active agents of change, I think there's a lot of things that are also required. The mentality of the young people in South Africa, the youth in South Africa, is something that maybe also needs to be questioned, to be looked into. The young people in South Africa continue to face limited access to quality education. So talk about how that has affected youth development and, democracy and the ability, for the young South Africans to shape the trajectory of their future or take it in their hands, basically.
Yeah, I mean, look, education is paramount, right? In any society, if young people do not have adequate access to education, they are unable to realize their full potential, and in that, unable to contribute meaningfully and actively in the way that they would like to that society itself and to the public good. And so, that's been a huge struggle post-apartheid in democratic South Africa, is the struggle for free, quality, decolonized education for all. From the level of nursery school through to tertiary education. And it's one that very much persists today. It's one that, really is about securing access to education for every young person in this country and every person in this country, so that they can realize their potential, they can pursue their aspirations, but also so that we have an education system that is not elitist, one where education, research, knowledge is produced for the public good, so that the society itself produces a generation of people who are interested and invested in the well-being of others, which is really at the core of the idea of free, quality, and decolonized education.
Right. Let's talk about the youth movements that you're a part of. What role do you play in fighting these challenges that are faced by a number of young people in South Africa? And how would you say that other young people can join in marking a grand day like this?
Look, so the Socialist Youth Movement is a relatively new organization, but it is an important one in the space. It's one that really needs to grow because it has an important role to play in radicalizing young people. I think, it's quite clear that the issues of our time are not only rooted in, but are also constantly reproduced by the global capitalist system, and the kind of neoliberal logic that underpins our economic systems in South Africa and across much of the world, specifically within Africa itself as well, which is very much a system which relies on inequality, it relies on unemployment, it relies on the brutal oppression and suppression of working class people and working class communities in order to continue existing. And it's very much one that needs to be dismantled. Now, what we see in many youth spaces today is that there's a focus on what we would call more kind of liberal democratic approaches to change. And these don't recognize the core, the crux of the issues and where they stem from and how they are reproduced, but often put forward a kind of idea that the issue is not policy, the issue is implementation, or we simply need more people involved in democratic processes. And while aspects of that are very much true, there's a serious issue with the way in which our systems, not only in South Africa but globally, are designed. Those systems reproduce and all sorts and all manner of oppressions and inequalities in our society. And so the role we envision is for SYM, at least for the Socialist Youth Movement, is making that as clear as possible to as many young people as possible, so that we can actually wage a struggle for a genuine socialist alternative, which emphasizes the well-being of all people, which emphasizes an economy which functions in the interests of all people, as opposed to functioning in the interest in the interests of a few, as opposed to having an economy which allows for the establishment and the creation of monopolies and oligopolies, and these allows for huge corporations to be more powerful than states themselves. Right. Today, if I can add, today we'll be supporting the march, which is set to take place on the Union buildings in Tshwane, and that march is one where a pretty good memorandum will be handed over to the presidency. It calls for things like the immediate implementation of a universal basic income grant of 1,500 rand, recognizing the importance of meeting the basic needs of all people in our society, but of course also recognizing the importance of work like caregiving, childcare, things like this. As it also goes further in addressing issues of unemployment, gender-based violence, climate change, etc., and really asserts the need for young people to be at the fore of decision-making in relation to developing policy and putting forward ideas, which we do have in order to address these.
I want to also ask about the biggest distractions for South African youth. There's a lot of young people who are involved in so many things, and people have also mentioned, the high crime rates in South Africa, but aside those negative aspects, I'm sure that there are also things that have distracted young South Africans from being able to get involved in the movement and push the country forward somehow, some way. So which would you say are the biggest distractions, that young South Africans need to, change their focus from?
Look, the culture of capitalism is distracting. It's one which is incredibly individualistic. It's one which is constantly, our young people are bombarded with all manner of distractions on a daily basis, as young people across the world are, which breed which what can be a materialistic outlook and worldview, and which can make people uninterested in getting involved in what matters and in meaningful participation within their communities and within civic life and political life. However, young people generally, not just in South Africa, are not necessarily idle, and I think that's a mischaracterization, because I think people are interested, and with all the young people we've worked with, you can see that there's a real inclination to want to get a sense of what the issues are, but also to want to be involved in solving them, and so. Really, what is lacking is opportunities for young people to get involved. But what we are seeing is that there are more and more community-based organizations, many of which are led and spearheaded and founded by young people, which are bringing people in to different sites of struggle, but which are also encouraging young people to participate actively and meaningfully.
And we also
in
encourage not just the youth of South Africa, but young people around the continent to join the youth in South Africa in celebrating National Youth Day. We are with you, rooting for you, and hoping that these walks and this activism yields positive results. Thank you so much for your time with us this morning.